Hunter Martinez had always been good with his hands. At 19, he could fix almost anything: broken engines, shattered windows, torn fences. What he couldn't fix was the emptiness that lived inside his chest, a hollow space that had grown larger since his father disappeared 3 years ago. His mother worked double shifts at the diner, leaving Hunter to wander the dusty streets of a small town where everyone knew everyone else's business, except when it came to the things that really mattered. The old quarry sat on the edge of town like a sleeping giant. Most people avoided it after sunset, whispering stories about accidents and ghosts. Hunter found peace there among the broken stones and wild grass. It was the one place where he could think clearly, where the weight of expectations and whispered conversations about his father's sudden departure couldn't reach him. On that particular evening in late September, the air carried the first hint of autumn's chill. Hunter had climbed to his usual spot on the quarry's rim, watching the sun paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. He was about to head home when he heard it, a sound that didn't belong. A soft whimper, barely audible over the evening breeze. Hunter froze, listening intently. There it was again, coming from somewhere below among the rocks. He grabbed his flashlight and began carefully making his way down the quarry wall, using the familiar handholds he'd discovered over months of visits. The sound grew clearer as he descended. Someone was crying, trying hard to muffle the noise. Behind a large boulder, partially hidden by overgrown weeds, Hunter found her. A girl about his age, maybe younger, curled into a tight ball. Her clothes were torn and dirty, her dark hair matted with blood and debris. When his flashlight beam found her face, she flinched violently, throwing up a defensive arm. "Please don't," she whispered, her voice raw from crying. "I'll leave, I won't cause any trouble." Hunter immediately lowered the flashlight, his heart racing. "Hey, it's okay, I'm not going to hurt you." He kept his voice soft, the way he'd learned to speak to injured animals. "My name's Hunter, what's yours?" She studied his face in the dim light, searching for something. Whatever she saw there must have reassured her slightly because she didn't try to run. "Maya," she said finally, her voice barely audible. "Maya, are you hurt?" Hunter could see dark stains on her clothes that looked like blood, and the way she held herself suggested pain she was trying to hide. She nodded slightly, then immediately regretted the movement as it sent fresh waves of agony through her body. "My leg," she managed, "and my ribs." Hunter's mind raced. He couldn't just leave her here, but he also sensed that involving authorities wasn't what she wanted. There was something in her eyes, a fear that went deeper than physical pain. "Can you tell me what happened?" Maya's expression closed off immediately. "It doesn't matter. Nothing matters anymore." Her words carried a weight that made Hunter's chest tighten with recognition. He knew that feeling, that sense of being completely alone in the world. "My truck's parked up top," he said carefully. "I could take you to the hospital, or we could call someone." "No," the word exploded from her with surprising force. "No hospitals, no police, no one can know I'm here." Panic flickered across her features. "Please, you have to promise me." Hunter found himself nodding before he fully understood why. Maybe it was the desperation in her voice, or maybe it was because he recognized a fellow outsider. "Okay, no hospitals, but you need help, Maya. You're really hurt." She laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "Hurt is nothing new." She shifted slightly and winced. "I've been running for 2 days. I thought I could make it further, but—" She gestured weakly at her injured leg. "Running from what?" Maya's eyes went distant, filled with memories that seemed to cause her physical pain. "From them, from everything." She looked up at Hunter with eyes that held too much knowledge for someone so young. "You wouldn't understand. Nice boys like you don't understand what some families are really like." But Hunter did understand, more than she knew. He understood the shame of having a family that wasn't what it appeared to be from the outside. He understood the weight of secrets that felt too heavy to carry alone. His father hadn't just disappeared. He'd left behind debts, broken promises, and a reputation that followed Hunter everywhere he went. "Try me," he said simply. Something in his tone must have reached her because Maya's defensive walls seemed to lower slightly. "My stepfather," she began, then stopped. The words seemed to stick in her throat. "He's not a good man, and my mother—" Her voice broke. "My mother chooses him over me every time." Hunter felt a familiar anger building in his chest, not at Maya, but at the adults who were supposed to protect children and failed so completely. "How long have you been dealing with this?" "Since I was 12, that's when she married him." Maya's hands shook as she pushed hair away from her face. At first it was just mean words, calling me names, telling me I was worthless. But then, she didn't need to finish. Hunter could see the truth in the careful way she moved, in the flinch when he'd first approached, his hands clenched into fists. "Did you try to tell someone?" he asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "Who would believe me? He's respected in our town. He runs a business, goes to church every Sunday, coaches Little League baseball." Maya's laugh was bitter. "Everyone thinks he's wonderful, and my mother." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "She says I make things up for attention." Hunter felt something crack open inside his chest. Not break, he'd been broken for a while now, but crack open like a shell that had been protecting something fragile underneath. "Where were you trying to go?" "Anywhere. My aunt lives 3 states away, but I don't know if she'd take me in. I don't know if she'd believe me either." Maya looked up at the darkening sky. "I had some money saved, but I lost my bag when I fell trying to climb down here. I was so tired, and it was getting dark, and I thought this would be a safe place to rest." "How did you get hurt?" Maya's expression darkened. "He found out I was planning to leave. I'd been hiding clothes and money for weeks, waiting for the right time, but somehow he knew." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "He said if I ever tried to run again, he'd make sure I couldn't run anywhere." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Hunter felt sick thinking about what this girl had endured, what she'd risked everything to escape from. "You can't go back," he said. It wasn't a question. "No," Maya's voice was firm despite her injuries. "I'd rather die out here than go back to that house." Hunter believed her. There was something in her tone that told him she meant every word. He thought about his own situation, his mother working constantly, his father's abandonment, the way people looked at him like he might turn out to be just as unreliable. He thought about all the nights he'd lain awake wishing for someone to truly understand what his life was like. "My mom works nights," he said suddenly. "She doesn't get home until after 7 in the morning. Our house isn't much, but it's clean and safe, and there's a spare room where my dad used to keep his tools." Maya stared at him. "You don't even know me." "I know enough." Hunter surprised himself with how certain he sounded. "I know you're brave enough to risk everything to get away from people who hurt you. I know you're scared but still fighting, and I know what it's like to feel like you're all alone in the world." Tears started flowing down Maya's face again, but these seemed different somehow, less desperate, more relieved. "Why would you help me?" Hunter considered the question. Why was he willing to take this risk for a stranger? Maybe it was because she wasn't really a stranger. Maybe it was because he saw something of himself in her desperate courage. Maybe it was because for the first time in 3 years, he had a chance to be the person someone needed, instead of the disappointment everyone expected. "Because someone should," he said finally. "Because you deserve help and because—" He paused, searching for the right words. "Because I think we understand each other." Maya nodded slowly. "What about your mother? Won't she ask questions?" "She will eventually, but she's good people, Maya, really good people. And right now you need medical attention whether you want it or not." Hunter stood up carefully. "I know a little about first aid, but those injuries need proper care." "I told you no hospitals." "Not a hospital. My mom's friend Sarah is a nurse. She helps people who can't go through regular channels sometimes. Drug addicts, people without insurance, folks who have reasons for staying off the radar." Hunter extended his hand toward Maya. "She won't ask questions she doesn't need answers to." Maya stared at his outstretched hand for a long moment. Hunter could see the internal struggle playing out across her face, the desire for help warring with the fear that had kept her alive this long. "If I come with you," she said slowly, "and this turns out to be some kind of trap." "Then you fight like hell and you run," Hunter said seriously. "You don't trust me completely yet, and that's smart. But Maya, you're hurt bad and it's going to get cold tonight. You need help and I'm offering it with no strings attached." Something in his tone, or maybe just the exhaustion and pain, finally broke through her resistance. Maya reached out and grasped his hand, allowing him to help her to her feet. She immediately gasped and nearly fell as her injured leg refused to support her weight. "Easy," Hunter said, steadying her with a gentle hand on her arm. "We'll take this slow." The climb out of the quarry took nearly an hour. Hunter had to half-carry Maya for most of it, stopping frequently to let her rest and catch her breath. By the time they reached his truck, she was shaking from pain and exhaustion. As Hunter helped her into the passenger seat, Maya grabbed his wrist with surprising strength. "Hunter," she said, her voice urgent. If this goes wrong, if your nurse friend calls the police, or if this somehow gets back to my family. It won't, he promised, though he wasn't entirely sure he could keep that promise. You don't understand. Maya's grip tightened. If they find me, they'll send me back, and he said next time he'd make sure I disappeared permanently, like other girls who caused trouble. A chill ran down Hunter's spine. Other girls. Maya nodded, her face pale in the dashboard light. His first wife had a daughter, too. She went missing when she was 16. Police said she was a runaway, case closed. Her eyes met his. I found some of her things hidden in our basement, things a girl wouldn't leave behind if she was really running away. Hunter felt the weight of what Maya was telling him settle on his shoulders like a heavy coat. This wasn't just about helping a runaway teenager anymore. This was about saving someone's life. Then we make sure they never find you, he said with a conviction that surprised them both. As they drove through the quiet streets of toward his house, Hunter found himself making mental plans. They'd need to be careful, smart about this. Maya would need time to heal, time to figure out her next move. And somehow, they'd need to do it all while keeping her existence a secret from a world that seemed determined to let people like her fall through the cracks. He glanced at Maya, who had fallen into an exhausted sleep against the passenger window despite her obvious pain. Her face looked younger in sleep, more vulnerable. It struck him that she was probably only a year or two younger than his own sister would have been if his sister had lived. The thought hit him unexpectedly. His sister Emma, born 2 years after him, who'd lived only 6 months before a heart defect took her away. He'd been too young to remember her clearly, but he'd always carried a protective instinct that had no outlet. Maybe this was why he felt so compelled to help Maya. Maybe this was his chance to finally be the big brother he'd never gotten to be. Whatever the reason, as Hunter pulled into his driveway and looked at the small, weathered house that had never quite felt like home, he realized that for the first time in years, he had a purpose that went beyond just surviving each day. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new questions, new dangers. But tonight, he was going to make sure that Maya was safe, warm, and cared for. It was a small thing, maybe, but it felt like the most important thing he'd ever done. The porch light cast long shadows across the front yard as Hunter gently woke Maya and helped her toward the house. Whatever came next, they would face it together. And for two people who had spent too long feeling completely alone in the world, that was everything. The house felt different with Maya in it. Hunter had lived in these rooms for 3 years, since his mother bought the place with the insurance money after his father left. He'd grown used to the silence, the emptiness that seemed to echo in every corner. But now, as he helped Maya settle onto the couch in the living room, the space felt alive in a way it hadn't since they'd first moved in. Maya moved like someone who expected pain with every breath, every shift of position. Hunter had seen injured animals move the same way, careful, guarded, ready to flee at the first sign of danger. He'd found an old sleeping bag and some pillows, trying to make her as comfortable as possible while they waited for Sarah to arrive. "She'll be here soon," Hunter said, checking his phone for the 3rd time in 10 minutes. "Sarah, I mean, she said she'd come as soon as her shift ends at the hospital." Maya nodded but didn't speak. She'd grown quieter since arriving at the house, and Hunter wondered if the reality of her situation was finally hitting her. In the light of the living room lamp, her injuries looked even worse than they had at the quarry. There were bruises on her arms that looked like fingerprints, and the way she held her ribs suggested internal damage that made Hunter's stomach clench with worry. "Are you hungry?" he asked, desperate to do something useful. "I could make some soup or—" "I don't think I can eat right now," Maya said softly. "My stomach feels all twisted up." Hunter understood. He'd felt that same sick feeling plenty of times, the aftermath of too much fear and adrenaline when your body couldn't quite believe it was safe yet. "That's okay. Maybe just some water for now." As he moved toward the kitchen, Maya's voice stopped him. "Hunter, thank you. I know you don't know me and this could get you in trouble and I just—" Her voice broke slightly. "Thank you." Something in her tone made Hunter's chest tighten. He turned back to look at her, this brave, broken girl who'd risked everything for freedom. "You don't have to thank me, Maya. Nobody should have to run away to be safe." A car door slammed outside, and both of them tensed. Hunter moved to the window and peered through the curtains, relief flooding through him when he saw Sarah's familiar blue in the driveway. Sarah had been his mother's friend for over a decade. She was a small woman with kind eyes and steady hands, the kind of person who could project calm even in the middle of chaos. She worked in the emergency room at County General, but she also volunteered at the free clinic downtown and had a reputation for helping people who fell through the cracks of the healthcare system. When Hunter opened the door, Sarah took one look at his face and immediately understood this wasn't a casual visit. "Where is she?" she asked simply, following Hunter into the living room. Maya's entire body went rigid when Sarah entered. Hunter could see the flight response kicking in, the way Maya's muscles tensed like she was preparing to bolt despite her injuries. "Maya, this is Sarah," Hunter said gently. "She's here to help." Sarah had stopped several feet away from the couch, giving Maya space while she assessed the situation. Years of working with trauma victims had taught her to read the signs. "Hello, Maya. Hunter called and said you were hurt. I'm a nurse, and I'd like to take a look at your injuries if that's okay with you." "You won't call anyone?" Maya's voice was barely a whisper. "No," Sarah said firmly. "Patient confidentiality applies even outside the hospital. What happens here stays here." Hunter watched as the two women studied each other. Maya was looking for signs of deception, anything that might indicate danger. Sarah was patient, letting Maya take as much time as she needed. "My leg," Maya finally said, "and my ribs and my head hurts." Sarah nodded and moved slowly toward her medical bag. "I'm going to need to examine you, which means I'll need to see the injuries. Hunter, could you give us some privacy?" Hunter started to leave, but Maya's voice stopped him. Could he stay, please?" The request surprised all three of them. "I know it's weird, but I feel safer with him here." Sarah looked at Hunter, who shrugged helplessly. "If that's what you want, Maya, I'll just sit over here and look the other way when necessary." What followed was 45 minutes of careful, gentle medical care. Sarah worked with the kind of quiet competence that spoke of years of experience. She cleaned wounds, checked for signs of concussion, felt carefully along Maya's ribs for breaks or fractures. Hunter sat in a chair across the room, facing away when Sarah needed to examine more private areas, but close enough that Maya could see him. "The good news," Sarah said finally, "is that nothing appears to be broken. You have some deep bruising on your ribs that's going to hurt for weeks, and your leg has a nasty gash that needed stitches, but you're going to heal. The head injury is mild, probably a concussion, but not severe." Maya closed her eyes with relief. "So I can travel if I needed to." Sarah frowned slightly. "Not immediately. You need rest, proper food, and time for these wounds to start healing. I'd recommend at least a week before you do anything strenuous." She paused. "Maya, some of these injuries, they're in different stages of healing. This wasn't a one-time incident, was it?" Maya's face went pale. She glanced at Hunter, who felt his own anger building again. "No," she said quietly. "I thought so." Sarah's voice was gentle but sad. "Honey, you know there are people who can help you, right? Official channels, legal protections." "I tried that." Maya's voice was flat. "Nobody believed me. He's too good at looking normal in front of other people." Sarah nodded slowly. She'd seen this pattern before: abusers who were pillars of their communities, victims who were dismissed or blamed. "Well, for now, you need to focus on healing. We can worry about the rest later." After Sarah left, promising to return in a few days to check on Maya's progress, the house fell into a comfortable quiet. Hunter had made up the couch with clean sheets and blankets, creating a nest of pillows that would support Maya's injured ribs. She looked small and vulnerable, surrounded by all that softness, but also more peaceful than she had since he'd found her. "Hunter," she said as he was turning off the lights, "can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Earlier you said you understood what it was like to feel alone. What did you mean?" Hunter considered pretending he hadn't said it or giving some vague non-answer. But there was something about Maya's honesty, about the way she'd trusted him with her darkest secrets, that demanded the same in return. "My dad left 3 years ago," he said, settling into the armchair near the couch. "Just disappeared one day, left behind a bunch of debts, some angry people, and a reputation that follows me everywhere I go." "What kind of reputation?" "The kind that makes people assume I'm going to turn out just like him. Unreliable, dishonest, someone who makes promises they don't keep." Hunter stared at his hands. "He borrowed money from people, promised to pay it back, then vanished. Some of those people still live in this town." Maya was quiet for a moment. "That's not your fault. Tell that to everyone who crosses the street when they see me coming. Tell that to the employers who won't hire me because they're afraid I'll steal from them or just stop showing up." The bitterness in his voice surprised even him. Tell that to the girl who broke up with me because her parents said I was from bad stock. People are idiots, Maya said with such fierce conviction that Hunter looked up in surprise. Maybe, but they're idiots with the power to make my life difficult. So what are you going to do? Let their stupidity define who you are. Hunter found himself smiling despite the heavy conversation. Is this the part where you give me inspirational advice while lying there covered in bandages? Hey, trauma bonding is a real thing. I figure we might as well get something positive out of this situation. Maya's attempt at humor was wobbly but genuine. Besides, you saved my life tonight. The least I can do is point out that you're obviously nothing like your father. How can you know that? You barely know me. Because, Maya said simply, your father left when things got difficult. You found a stranger bleeding in a quarry and decided to risk everything to help her. See the difference. Hunter felt something shift inside his chest. For 3 years, he'd carried the weight of other people's expectations and judgments. He'd started to believe them, started to see himself through their disappointed eyes. But Maya was right. His actions tonight proved he was capable of being someone completely different from the man who'd abandoned his family. My mom's going to be home in the morning, he said. She works the overnight shift at the diner, so she usually gets back around 7:30. What will you tell her? The truth, at least most of it. Hunter had been thinking about this all evening. She'll want to help, that's just who she is. But she'll also worry about the legal implications, about what could happen if someone finds out we're harboring a runaway. Maya's face clouded over. Maybe I should leave before she gets home. I don't want to cause problems for your family. Where would you go? You can barely walk, Maya. And besides, Hunter added with more confidence than he felt, my mom has a pretty good sense about people. She'll see what I see. Which is someone worth helping. Maya's eyes filled with tears again, but she wiped them away quickly. I'm not used to people thinking that about me. Then you've been around the wrong people. They talked until nearly 3 in the morning, sharing stories and fears and dreams that neither of them had ever spoken aloud before. Hunter learned that Maya loved to read, that she'd been planning to study literature in college before her home situation became unbearable. Maya discovered that Hunter had always wanted to be a teacher, that he'd given up on college because he couldn't afford it and didn't think anyone would recommend him for scholarships. You should try again, Maya said sleepily, as exhaustion finally began to overtake them both. For college, I mean, you'd make a good teacher. Maybe, Hunter said, though the idea felt foreign after years of believing his future was limited. Promise me something, Maya said just as Hunter was about to head upstairs to his room. What? Promise me that no matter what happens, whether I stay or go, whether this works out or falls apart, promise me you'll apply to college. Just try. Hunter looked at this extraordinary girl who'd survived things he couldn't imagine and was still somehow concerned about his future. Only if you promise me something too. What? Promise me you won't give up. On school, on your dreams, on finding a life that doesn't hurt. Whatever it takes, however long it takes. Maya nodded solemnly, I promise. The next morning came too quickly. Hunter had barely slept, partly from worry and partly from the strange excitement of having his world suddenly expanded beyond its usual boundaries. He was in the kitchen making coffee when he heard his mother's key in the front door. Martinez was a small woman who somehow managed to take up a lot of space. She had the kind of presence that came from years of handling difficult customers and managing household crises on very little sleep. Hunter heard her pause in the entryway, probably noticing the extra shoes by the door, or maybe just sensing that something was different about the house. Hunter, she called softly, aware that he might still be sleeping. In here, Mom. Appeared in the kitchen doorway, already dressed for sleep, but alert in the way that mothers are when they sense their children need them. She looked tired but not exhausted. It had been a good night at the diner then. Whose shoes are those by the door? Hunter took a deep breath. Mom, I need to tell you something, and I need you to keep an open mind. His expression immediately shifted to high alert. She moved to the kitchen table and sat down, giving Hunter her full attention. Tell me. So Hunter told her. He explained about finding Maya at the quarry, about her injuries and her fear of going to authorities. He talked about Sarah's visit and Maya's situation at home, though he was careful not to share details that weren't his to tell. Throughout his explanation, listened without interruption, her face growing more concerned with each revelation. "Where is she now?" asked when Hunter finished. "Sleeping on the couch. Mom, she's really hurt, not just physically, but she's been through things no kid should have to go through." Was quiet for a long moment, processing everything Hunter had told her. "You could have called me," she said finally. "I could have come home early. I knew you needed the money from last night's shift, and honestly, I wasn't sure what you'd say about bringing home a stranger." Hunter Martinez said, using his full name in the way that always got his attention. "Do you really think so little of me?" "No, Mom, I raised you to help people who need help. I raised you to see past your own problems when someone else is suffering worse. Did you think I was only talking about helping people when it was convenient?" Hunter felt a flush of shame. "No, ma'am." "Good. Now, what does this girl need most right now?" "Safety, time to heal, and eventually a way to start over somewhere else." Nodded thoughtfully. "The first two we can provide, the third, well, we'll figure something out." She stood up from the table. "I want to meet her." Hunter led his mother to the living room, where Maya was just beginning to stir. The morning light streaming through the windows showed her injuries in harsh detail, and Hunter heard his mother's sharp intake of breath when she saw the bruises and bandages. Maya's eyes opened and immediately went wide with fear when she saw. She struggled to sit up despite the obvious pain it caused her. "Maya," Hunter said gently, "this is my mom. Mom, this is Maya." Approached slowly, her movements deliberate and non-threatening. "Hello, me. Hunter has told me a little about your situation. You're safe here." Something in his tone, the warmth, the genuine concern, the complete lack of judgment seemed to reach Maya in a way that nothing else had. Her defensive posture relaxed slightly. "Mrs. Martinez, I don't want to cause any trouble for your family," Maya said. "If you want me to leave." "The only place you're leaving for is the doctor's office if those injuries get worse," said firmly. "And it's not Mrs. Martinez. Now, have you eaten anything?" "Sarah said she should try to eat something light," Hunter offered. "Maybe some toast or soup." Sarah, good, she knows what she's doing, was already moving toward the kitchen. "I'll make some of my grandmother's healing soup. It fixes everything." As bustled around the kitchen, Hunter found himself marveling at how naturally she'd accepted Maya's presence. There had been no interrogation, no demands for details, no lectures about the dangers of harboring a runaway. Just immediate, practical caring. "Your mom seems really nice," Maya said quietly. "She is. She's also tougher than she looks. She'll protect you, Maya, we both will." Over the next few hours, Hunter watched his mother work her quiet magic. Had a way of making people feel like family without being invasive or overwhelming. She brought Maya soup and homemade bread, found soft clothes that would be comfortable over her bandages, and created an atmosphere of safety that seemed to settle Maya's constant vigilance. "You know," said during lunch, "I've been thinking about getting some help around here. Someone to help with cooking and cleaning while I work such long hours. It wouldn't pay much, but it would include room and board." Hunter looked up sharply, understanding immediately what his mother was offering. Maya caught it too, her eyes widening. "Mrs., I couldn't accept charity." "It's not charity if you're working for it. And honestly, this house could use a woman's touch. Living with just Hunter has been like living with a very tall, very messy teenager." "Hey," Hunter protested, but he was smiling. "Besides," continued, "you'd be doing me a favor. I worry about Hunter here alone so much. It would be nice knowing someone responsible was keeping an eye on him." Maya looked between Hunter and, clearly overwhelmed by the generosity being offered. "What about? What if my family comes looking for me?" "Then we'll deal with that when it happens," said simply. "One day at a time, me, one day at a time." That evening, as got ready for another shift at the diner, she pulled Hunter aside. "This is serious. You understand that, right? If her family involves the police if they accuse us of kidnapping." "I know, Mom, but what else could we do? Send her back to people who hurt her?" Cupped Hunter's face in her hands. "You did the right thing. I'm proud of you. But we need to be smart about this. We need to think about long-term solutions, not just day-to-day survival." Sarah mentioned there might be legal ways to help. Emancipation or proving abuse or something. "We'll look into it, quietly, and in the meantime we take care of her." Glanced toward the living room where Maya was reading one of Hunter's books. "She's lucky to have found you, and maybe you're lucky to have found her too." As his mother left for work and the house settled into evening quiet, Hunter found himself thinking about's last words. Was he lucky to have found Maya? The situation was complicated, potentially dangerous, and full of uncertainty. But for the first time in 3 years, Hunter felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be, doing exactly what he was meant to do. Looking at Maya curled up on the couch with her book, beginning to look truly relaxed for the first time since he'd found her, Hunter thought that maybe luck had very little to do with it. Maybe this was just what happened when two people who understood being alone in the world found each other. Whatever challenges tomorrow would bring, they would face them together, and that felt like the most important thing in the world. 3 weeks had passed since Hunter found Maya at the quarry, and their routine had settled into something that felt surprisingly natural. Maya's physical injuries were healing well under Sarah's careful monitoring, but Hunter could see that the deeper wounds, the ones that lived in her eyes and in the way she still startled at unexpected sounds, would take much longer to mend. The arrangement had proposed was working better than any of them had expected. Maya threw herself into household tasks with the dedication of someone desperate to prove her worth. She cooked elaborate meals with ingredients she found at the local market, cleaned with methodical precision, and had somehow managed to organize Hunter's chaotic room in a way that actually made sense. But more than that, she'd brought a lightness to the house that had been missing since Hunter's father left. In the evenings, after went to work, and before they both got too tired, Hunter and Maya would sit at the kitchen table and work on their respective goals. Hunter had taken Maya's advice seriously and was filling out college applications, while Maya studied for her GED using books Hunter had borrowed from the library. They developed an easy rhythm of shared homework sessions and quiet conversation that felt like the closest thing to family Hunter had experienced in years. But the peace couldn't last forever, and Hunter knew it. The outside world had a way of intruding on even the safest hiding places. The first sign of trouble came on a Tuesday morning when Hunter was walking back from the hardware store. He'd noticed a dark sedan parked across from their house for the second time in 3 days. Different times, different angles, but the same car with tinted windows that made it impossible to see who was inside. Hunter took a detour around the block, approaching his house from the rear alley instead of the front street. His heart was pounding as he slipped through the back door, where he found Maya scrubbing the kitchen floor with focused intensity. "Maya," he said quietly, "we might have a problem." She looked up immediately, and Hunter saw the fear that was never far from the surface spring back into her eyes. "What kind of problem?" "There's been a car watching the house. I've seen it twice now, always during the day when Mom's sleeping and you're here alone." Maya's face went pale. She dropped the scrub brush and gripped the edge of the counter. "They found me." "We don't know that for sure. It could be anything: insurance investigators looking into Dad's disappearance, debt collectors, even just someone looking for a different address." But even as Hunter said the words, he didn't believe them. The timing was too coincidental, and the feeling in his gut was too familiar. He'd learned to trust that instinct during the years of dealing with his father's creditors and the various people who'd come looking for money or answers. "I have to leave," Maya said, already moving toward the stairs. "Tonight. If they're watching during the day, they'll make their move soon." "Wait," Hunter caught her arm gently. "Let's think about this rationally. If it is your family, running right now while you're still not fully healed could be more dangerous than staying and dealing with whatever comes." "You don't understand." Maya's voice was rising with panic. "If it's him, if my stepfather found me, he won't just take me home. He'll make sure I disappear, and anyone who helped me." She looked at Hunter with desperate eyes. "He'll hurt you too, and your mother. I can't let that happen." Hunter felt a chill run down his spine. He'd been thinking of this as a problem they could solve together, but Maya was right. He didn't fully understand the level of danger they might be facing. "Okay," he said, forcing his voice to stay calm. "What do you think we should do?" Maya was already heading upstairs. "I'll pack my things. There's a bus station about 40 miles north, if I can get there without being seen." "Maya, stop." Hunter followed her up the stairs. "You can barely afford a bus ticket to the next county, let alone somewhere safe, and your injuries." "I'll figure it out." Maya was throwing her few possessions into a backpack with shaking hands. "I always figure it out." Hunter watched her pack and felt something fierce and protective rise in his chest. For 3 weeks, he'd watched Maya slowly begin to trust that she might be safe, that she might have found people who would protect her instead of hurt her. The thought of her returning to a life of running and hiding made him physically angry. There's another option, he said suddenly. Maya paused in her packing. What? We could face this together, all of us. Mom, Sarah, you, me. If it is your family, if they try to force you to go back, we document everything. We get evidence, we fight. Hunter, you've seen what he does to people who fight him. Those bruises on my body weren't from falling downstairs. I know, but you're not alone anymore, Maya. You have people who care about you, people who will stand with you. Hunter moved closer, his voice intense with conviction. And maybe it's time someone stood up to him. Maya stared at Hunter for a long moment. You could get seriously hurt. Your family could get hurt. We're already involved. The moment I found you at the quarry, we became involved. And honestly, Hunter surprised himself with what came next. I'm tired of running from things. I've been running from my father's reputation for 3 years, letting it define what I thought was possible for my life. Maybe it's time to stop running and start fighting back. Before Maya could respond, they heard his voice from downstairs. She was home early from her shift, which meant something was wrong. Hunter, Maya, could you come down here, please? They found in the living room with a woman Hunter didn't recognize. She was maybe 40, with graying brown hair and the kind of tired eyes that spoke of years of difficult decisions. She was holding a manila folder and looked uncomfortable. This is, said carefully, she's a social worker with the state. Hunter felt Maya go rigid beside him, stood and extended her hand toward Maya with a gentle smile. Maya, I've been looking for you for quite some time. I'm not going back, Maya said immediately, her voice strong despite the fear Hunter could see in her posture. That's not why I'm here. His voice was calm and professional, but not unkind. I'm here because 3 days ago your stepfather was arrested. The words hung in the air like a physical presence. Hunter felt Maya sway slightly beside him and reached out to steady her. Arrested for what? Maya whispered. Multiple charges, sexual assault, child abuse, endangering the welfare of a minor. Opened her folder. It seems another girl came forward, someone from his work. Her testimony prompted police to reopen the investigation into his first stepdaughter's disappearance. Maya collapsed into the nearest chair. Hunter had never seen anyone look so simultaneously relieved and devastated. The girl who disappeared, Maya managed. Amy, they found her. His expression grew sad. They found her remains. I'm sorry, Maya, but the evidence they found with her body, combined with the new victim's testimony and some things that were discovered in your stepfather's possession, built a very strong case against him. What about my mother? Maya's voice was barely audible. Your mother has been arrested as well. Accessory charges, child endangerment, failure to report. Sat down across from Maya. Maya, there are things you need to know. When police searched your house after your stepfather's arrest, they found evidence that your mother was more aware of what was happening than she claimed. Hunter watched Maya process this information. He could see the war between relief and grief playing out across her face. The people who were supposed to protect her were finally facing consequences, but they were also the only family she'd known. So what happens to me now? Maya asked. That's partly up to you. You're 17, which gives you some options. You could enter the foster system, though at your age that's often temporary until you age out. You could petition for emancipation, especially given your circumstances. Paused. Or, if you have a stable living situation and adult supervision, you might be able to stay where you are while we work out a more permanent solution. Spoke up for the first time since the introductions. Maya has a home here for as long as she wants it. Looked around the house, taking in the clean, warm environment and the obvious care between the 3 people in front of her. Mrs. Martinez, you understand the responsibility involved in taking in a traumatized teenager, the legal implications, the emotional challenges. I understand that this girl needs stability and people who care about her, said firmly. And I understand that sometimes families are chosen, not born. Made notes in her folder. There will be paperwork, background checks, home visits. Maya will need counseling, medical follow-ups, educational planning. She looked at Maya directly. And you'll need to testify at your stepfather's trial. Are you prepared for that? Maya looked at Hunter, then back at. Will other girls be safer if I testify? Yes, your testimony could be crucial in making sure he never hurts another child. Then I'll do it. Maya's voice was stronger than Hunter had heard it since the night he found her. I'll do whatever it takes. The next few hours passed in a blur of paperwork and phone calls. Explained the legal process, the requirements for Maya to remain in care, and the support services available to help her transition back into a normal life. Sarah arrived to provide medical documentation of Maya's injuries and healing progress. A victim's advocate was scheduled to meet with Maya the following week to prepare her for the trial process. Through it all, Hunter found himself marveling at Maya's strength. She answered difficult questions with quiet dignity, made decisions about her future with remarkable clarity, and handled the bureaucratic maze with more grace than many adults would have managed. As evening fell and the official visitors left, the house felt strangely empty despite the three of them being together. Maya sat at the kitchen table, staring at the pile of paperwork that would govern her immediate future. "Are you okay?" Hunter asked, settling into the chair beside her. "I don't know," Maya said honestly. "I thought I'd feel happier about him being arrested, and I do, but also—" She struggled to find words. "He was awful to me, but he was still the only father figure I've known since I was 12, and my mother." "It's okay to feel confused about it," said, bringing Maya a cup of tea. "Love and hate aren't opposites when it comes to family. Sometimes they exist right alongside each other." "How do I forgive her?" Maya asked suddenly. "How do I forgive the person who was supposed to protect me but chose him instead?" Sat down across from Maya. "Maybe you don't. Maybe forgiveness isn't the goal right now. Maybe the goal is just healing enough to build a life that doesn't revolve around what they did to you." Hunter reached over and took Maya's hand. "You don't have to figure it all out tonight. You've got time now. For the first time since you were 12, you've got time to just be a kid and figure out what you want your life to look like." Maya squeezed his hand. "I want to finish school, and I want to testify at the trial, and I want—" She paused, looking around the kitchen that had become her safe haven. "I want to stay here if you'll have me." "Me," said warmly. "This is your home for as long as you want it to be." That night, Hunter lay in his bed, staring at the ceiling and thinking about how completely his life had changed. 3 weeks ago, he'd been a lonely kid with no clear future, defined by his father's mistakes and limited by other people's expectations. Tonight, he was part of a family again, a chosen family that had formed around the simple principle of taking care of each other. Downstairs, he could hear Maya and talking quietly in the kitchen. They'd developed their own relationship over the past weeks, and Hunter knew his mother had become the maternal figure Maya had been missing for years. Had a way of providing guidance without being controlling, love without being overwhelming. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. There would be court dates and therapy sessions, educational planning and legal proceedings. Maya would have to relive her trauma in front of strangers and face her abusers in court. It wouldn't be easy. But tonight, she was safe. Tonight, she was home. And Hunter was part of a family that had been built on the foundation of refusing to let people face their darkest moments alone. He thought about the college applications sitting on his desk, the ones Maya had encouraged him to complete. For the first time, they felt like real possibilities instead of impossible dreams. He thought about teaching, about maybe specializing in helping kids who'd fallen through the cracks the way he and Maya had. From downstairs came the sound of quiet laughter, telling one of her stories from the diner, Maya responding with her own observations about small-town life. It was the sound of family, real family, built on choice and care rather than obligation or fear. Hunter smiled in the darkness and finally fell asleep to the comforting murmur of voices from below, knowing that whatever tomorrow brought, they would face it together. The girl who'd whispered desperately about finishing things fast had instead found the beginning of something beautiful, a life where she was valued, protected, and loved. The dark sedan never returned to their street. And in the weeks that followed, as Maya prepared to face her past in court and build her future, Hunter began to understand that sometimes the most profound changes in life came not from grand gestures or dramatic moments, but from the simple decision to see someone's pain and refuse to look away. He'd found Maya broken and bleeding in a quarry, convinced that her story was ending. Instead, it had just been the beginning of a new chapter, not just for her, but for all of them. And as Hunter drifted off to sleep surrounded by the sounds of his chosen family, he realized that the most important thing he'd ever done was exactly what Maya had asked him not to do that first night. He'd refused to finish things fast, choosing instead to stick around and see what healing looked like when people weren't forced to face it alone. 2 years later, Hunter stood at the edge of the same quarry where he'd first found Maya, but this time he wasn't alone. Maya sat beside him on the rocky outcrop, her legs dangling over the edge, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. The scared, broken girl he discovered that September night had grown into a confident young woman preparing for her freshman year of college. But more than that, she'd become his sister in every way that mattered. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't come here that night?" Maya asked, breaking the comfortable silence they'd been sharing. Hunter considered the question seriously. "Sometimes, but not in a dwelling way, more like wondering about the million small choices that led to that moment." Maya nodded. "I think about it too, about how close I came to." She didn't finish the sentence, but she didn't need to. They both understood how desperate she'd been that night, how ready she'd been to give up entirely. "But you didn't," Hunter said simply. "You fought, you survived, you asked for help." "I asked you to finish it fast," Maya reminded him with a wry smile. "Not exactly asking for help." "No, but you didn't finish it yourself either. Some part of you was still fighting, still hoping something might change." Hunter picked up a small stone and tossed it into the quarry below. "I think that's the part of you that saved both of us." The trial had ended 8 months earlier with convictions for both Maya's stepfather and mother. He'd received a life sentence without the possibility of parole. She'd gotten 12 years. Maya's testimony had been devastating and brave, delivered with a steady voice that had brought tears to the eyes of everyone in the courtroom. Other victims had come forward during the trial, confirming what Maya had suspected, that her stepfather's abuse went far beyond their family. The aftermath had been difficult in ways none of them had expected. Maya had struggled with survivor's guilt, with the complex emotions of seeing her only family imprisoned, with the challenge of building an identity that wasn't defined by trauma. There had been therapy sessions, difficult conversations, and moments when the weight of everything seemed too much to bear. But there had also been victories, small and large. Maya had graduated high school a year early, earned a full scholarship to study social work at the state university, and had become an advocate for other survivors of family abuse. Hunter had been accepted to 3 different colleges and had chosen to study education with a focus on at-risk youth. Had been promoted to day manager at the diner, finally able to work normal hours and see her family every evening. More importantly, they'd learned how to be a real family together. Not perfect, they still had disagreements and difficult days, but real in a way that was based on choice and mutual support rather than obligation or fear. "I got a letter yesterday," Maya said suddenly, "from my mother." Hunter looked at her sharply. This was the first contact Maya had received from her mother since the sentencing. "What did she say?" "She wants to see me. She says she's sorry that she's been getting counseling in prison, that she wants to make things right." Maya's voice was carefully neutral. "She says she loves me and that she always loved me, even when she made the wrong choices." "How do you feel about that?" Maya was quiet for a long moment, considering. "I don't know. Part of me wants to believe that she's changed, that she really understands what she did wrong. But another part of me remembers all the times she chose him over me, all the times she looked the other way when I needed her most." "You don't have to decide right now," Hunter said. "Or ever, really. You get to choose what kind of relationship you want with her, if any." Said something similar. She said forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, and it doesn't mean putting yourself back in a position to be hurt again. Maya smiled slightly. "Your mom is pretty wise." "Our mom," Hunter corrected gently. Maya's smile widened. "Our mom, I still can't believe she legally adopted me." The adoption had been finalized 6 months earlier, despite Maya being just months away from turning 18. Had insisted on making it official, saying that family should be recognized by law as well as love. Maya had cried during the ceremony happy tears, overwhelmed by the reality of finally having a parent who put her first. "Speaking of family," Hunter said, pulling an envelope from his jacket pocket, "I got my acceptance letter today." Maya's eyes went wide. "The graduate program already?" Hunter nodded, trying to contain his excitement. "Full assistantship. I start the master's program in counseling psychology in the fall." Maya threw her arms around him in a fierce hug. "Hunter, that's incredible. I'm so proud of you." "I couldn't have done it without you pushing me to apply to college in the first place," he said, hugging her back. "You changed everything for me, Maya. You made me believe I could be more than my father's mistakes." "You changed everything for me too," Maya said quietly. "You gave me a family, a future, a reason to keep fighting." They sat together as the last light faded from the sky, both thinking about the journey that had brought them to this moment. The quarry that had once been a place of desperation and pain had become a place of reflection and gratitude. They came here sometimes when they needed to remember how far they'd traveled, how much they'd overcome. "I've been thinking about something," Maya said as they prepared to head back to the truck. "About what I want to do after I finish my degree." "What's that?" "I want to start a program for teenage runaways, a place where kids can get help without having to go through the system right away, somewhere they can be safe while they figure out their options." Hunter felt a surge of pride and admiration. Even after everything she'd been through, Maya's first instinct was to help others in similar situations. "That's a brilliant idea, and you're the perfect person to do it. I was hoping you might want to help. Once you finish your master's program, we could work together." The suggestion hit Hunter with unexpected force. The idea of combining their experiences, their education, their shared understanding of what it meant to fall through the cracks. It felt like the most right thing he'd ever imagined doing. "I'd love that," he said sincerely. "We could really make a difference." "We already have," Maya pointed out. "We saved each other." As they drove home through the quiet streets of, Hunter reflected on how completely his life had changed direction since that September night 2 years ago. He'd gone from being a lonely kid with limited prospects to being a college graduate heading to graduate school, part of a loving family, with plans to dedicate his career to helping vulnerable young people. But the changes went deeper than external circumstances. Hunter had learned that he was capable of courage, of putting someone else's needs before his own safety or comfort. He discovered that he could be depended upon, that he could be the kind of person others turned to in crisis. Most importantly, he'd learned that families could be created through choice and love, that the circumstances of your birth didn't have to determine the trajectory of your life. Maya had changed, too, in ways that went far beyond healing from physical injuries. She'd learned to trust again, to accept love without constantly waiting for it to be withdrawn. She discovered her own strength and resilience and had chosen to use her experiences to help others rather than letting them define her as a victim. The scared girl who'd been ready to give up had become a powerful advocate for change. Was waiting for them when they got home, as she always was these days. The kitchen table was set for 3, with a home-cooked meal that smelled like love and comfort. This had become their routine family dinners where they shared the events of their day, made plans for the future, and simply enjoyed each other's company. "So," said as they sat down to eat, "any news to share?" Hunter and Maya exchanged glances, both grinning. "Hunter got into graduate school," Maya announced proudly. "Maya got a letter from her mother," Hunter added more quietly. His face showed the full range of emotions: pride for Hunter's achievement, concern for Maya's emotional. She'd become expert at holding multiple feelings simultaneously, supporting both her children through their different challenges. "Congratulations," she said to Hunter, reaching over to squeeze his hand. "I'm so proud of you." Then she turned to Maya. "And how are you feeling about the letter?" "Confused, angry, a little sad." Maya picked at her food. "But also okay, I think. Like whatever I decide about whether to respond or see her, I know I'm strong enough to handle it." "You are," agreed. "You're both strong enough to handle whatever comes next. Look how far you've come already." They talked through dinner about Maya's college plans, Hunter's graduate program, ideas for maybe opening her own restaurant someday. They made plans for a family vacation before the school year started, discussed Maya's summer job at the local crisis center, celebrated Hunter's upcoming graduation from his bachelor's program. It was a perfectly ordinary family dinner, and yet Hunter found himself marveling at how extraordinary it felt. 2 years ago, none of them could have imagined this life. The easy conversation, the shared dreams, the security of knowing they belonged together. After dinner, while Maya cleaned up, Hunter stepped outside onto the front porch. The same porch where he'd brought Maya that first night, scared and uncertain about what he was getting himself into. He could see the spot where he'd parked his truck, remember the weight of Maya leaning against him as he helped her up the front steps. Maya found him there a few minutes later. Joining him on the porch swing had installed the previous spring. "Penny, for your thoughts," she asked. "Just thinking about that first night, how terrified I was about whether I was doing the right thing." "Were you doing the right thing?" Hunter looked at Maya healthy, confident, preparing for college and a career helping others, surrounded by love and support. "Yeah," he said simply. "I think I was." "You know what I think," Maya said, leaning back against the swing. "I think we were both doing the right thing that night. You chose to help instead of walking away. I chose to trust you instead of giving up. We made those choices together, even when we were both scared." "And look what happened." "Look what happened," Maya agreed. They swung gently in the evening air, listening to the sounds of their neighborhood settling in for the night. Inside was humming while she finished the dishes. From down the street came the sound of children playing in someone's backyard. It was peaceful and normal and everything Maya had dreamed of during those years when safety felt impossible. "Maya," Hunter said suddenly, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." "That night at the quarry, when you said what you said about finishing it fast, did you really mean it? Or was there part of you that was hoping someone would find you?" Maya considered the question seriously. She'd been asked variations of it by therapists, by advocates, by court officials during the trial. But somehow, coming from Hunter, it felt different, more important. "Both," she said finally. "I meant it because I couldn't imagine any other way out, but I also chose that spot because you came there sometimes. I'd seen you there before over the past few weeks when I was planning my escape. Part of me hoped, maybe if I couldn't find the courage to save myself, someone else would." "You did save yourself," Hunter said firmly. "You made the choice to run in the first place. You survived long enough to get help. You chose to trust me instead of running away. You saved yourself, Maya. I just helped a little." "We saved each other," Maya said, echoing her words from earlier. "And we're still saving each other every day." As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Hunter felt a deep sense of completion. Not the ending of their story, they were both just beginning their adult lives, with college and careers and relationships still ahead of them. But the completion of something that had started that night in the quarry, the transformation of two broken, lonely young people into a family. Maya would go to college in the fall, studying to become the kind of social worker who really listened to kids in crisis. Hunter would begin his graduate program, learning to provide counseling to adolescents who'd experienced trauma. Would continue building her career and supporting both her children as they reached for their dreams. And someday, they'd open that program Maya had envisioned, a safe place for runaway teens to find help and hope. They'd create the kind of support system they both could have used, ensuring that other kids in desperate situations would have alternatives to despair. "I love you, you know," Maya said quietly as they prepared to head inside. "You and both. I love you more than I ever loved the people I was born to." "I love you too," Hunter replied. "My sister, my family, my friend." They found in the living room reading a book, and the three of them settled in for their evening routine, Maya working on college prep materials, Hunter reviewing his acceptance letters and graduate school requirements, planning the next day's work schedule. It was comfortable and domestic, and everything Hunter had missed during the years after his father left. As the evening wound down and they began getting ready for bed, Hunter thought about all the ways that night at the quarry had changed their lives. Maya had asked him to finish something fast, but instead he'd chosen to begin something slow and careful and lasting. They'd built a family together, one day at a time, one choice at a time, one moment of choosing love over fear at a time. The girl who'd hidden bleeding behind a boulder had become a young woman ready to change the world. The boy who'd felt defined by his father's failures had become a man determined to help other kids overcome their circumstances. The mother who'd worked herself to exhaustion trying to hold her family together had found that sometimes families expanded in the most unexpected ways. Looking back, Hunter realized that the most important thing he'd ever done was refuse to give up on someone who was ready to give up on herself. And the most important thing Maya had ever done was trust a stranger enough to let him help. Everything else, the family they'd built, the futures they were planning, the love they shared, had grown from that single moment of choosing hope over despair. As Hunter turned off the lights and headed upstairs, he could hear Maya and talking quietly in Maya's room, the way they did sometimes when Maya needed extra reassurance or comfort. The sound made him smile. His family was safe, whole, and happy. They'd survived their individual traumas and built something beautiful together. The quarry still sat on the edge of town, but it no longer held any power over them. They'd transformed it from a place of desperation into a symbol of survival, from a site of potential tragedy into the beginning of their greatest triumph. And tomorrow would bring new possibilities, new opportunities to grow and learn and help others. Maya would continue preparing for college. Hunter would finalize his graduate school plans, would work toward her dream of restaurant ownership. They'd face whatever challenges came their way the same way they'd faced everything else together. In the end, that's what saved them both, the simple decision to refuse to face their darkest moments alone. Maya hadn't finished fast, as she'd requested that night. Instead, she'd chosen to begin slowly, carefully, surrounded by people who saw her worth and were willing to fight for her future. And Hunter had learned that sometimes the most heroic thing you can do is simply refuse to walk away from someone else's pain. That night at the quarry, he'd made a choice that changed 3 lives forever. He'd chosen love over fear, action over indifference, hope over despair. It was the best decision he'd ever made. And as he drifted off to sleep in his comfortable room in the house that had become home to all of them, Hunter knew that wherever life took them next, they'd always have this foundation. A family built on choice, strengthened by adversity, and sustained by the unshakable belief that everyone deserves to be loved and protected and given a chance to heal. The runaway's secret had been revealed, but it wasn't the secret of her abuse or her escape. It was the secret she'd carried in her heart that night at the quarry, the hope that someone, somewhere, might care enough to help. Hunter had been that someone, and in helping her, he discovered his own capacity for courage, compassion, and unconditional love. Their story had begun with whispered words about finishing fast. It had become a testament to the power of refusing to give up, on yourself or on others. And it would continue for the rest of their lives as they carried forward the lesson they'd learned together. That healing happens not in isolation, but in the presence of people who refuse to let you face your battles alone.